Hi guys, how are you doing? Last time we were reading Maroo of the Winter Caves and we finished chapter 7. So today we're going to start chapter 8 and I would like you to grab a pencil and take notes on some questions that I'm going to ask. Are you ready? So, chapter 8, The Silent Drum. Maroo and Otak both began to cry. Is he dead? They asked Old Mother. Now remember that last chapter the hunters they found Maroo's father and he was just laying there and they didn't know if he was alive. But Old Mother only said, "Fetch the rope." Maroo, sniffing back her tears, uncoiled the plaited hide rope. Old Mother looked around for something to tie it to. The rocks were too big. A small birch, its top flattened and forced sideways by the wind, grew near the edge of the drop. Old Mother tested the short, slender trunk. Would it work? She wound the rope around the tree several times and tied it firmly. "We must all pull too," she said, "in case the tree breaks." She sent the rope sliding carefully down until it reached the ledge. Vorka was squatting, resting his right arm awkwardly in his knees. He picked up the end. They saw him fumbling with cold hands as he tied it around his waist. He stood up and signaled that he was ready. Old Mother muttered, "If that arm is broken, he won't be able to climb." But the three of them stepped back and pulled with all their weight on the rope as Vorka began the attempt. The tree creaked and bent. Almost at once they heard a cry of pain and the rope went slack. When they looked over the edge, Vorka was crumpled up, shaking his head and groaning. "There is too much pain," Old Mother said. "The arm must be splinted first. I shall go down." Maroo looked at the climb down. It was long, many times her own height, and dangerous with few fingerholds. Impossible for Old Mother. "Let me go," she said. "I can splint the arm." Old Mother looked doubtful. "It must be done skillfully, or there will be great pain and the arm will grow crooked," she said. "A hunter's right arm is a task for Iringadu." "You can't climb down, Old Mother," Maroo protested. "You will fall. Let me go. I've watched you splinting broken arms." Old Mother hesitated a moment. Then she nodded. "You're right. You must go," she said. Vorka had untied the rope, and Old Mother hauled it in. Maroo tied it around her own waist and carefully lowered herself over the cliff feet first, feeling for toeholds in the rock. Otak and Old Mother stepped back, ready to brace themselves against the rope if she should slip. Maroo moved cautiously down the first few steps. Her eyes came level with the cliff top and then, with the next few and step down, passed below it. She felt panic-stricken. She clung with white, clenched knuckles to the rough rock, unable to let go. Looking down between her feet, she saw the upturned face of Vorka, still streaked with its hunter's pattern. Far below. I'll fall and kill him, she thought. Movement seemed impossible. Her fingers were frozen to the rock. Vorka called up encouragingly from below, but the rock face looked sheer. Where would she put her feet? She heard Otak's voice from above. Now I want you to write down. What do you think Otak would tell her? Right, what do you think he would tell her? Now, I want you to write down actually what he told her. What he actually told her. I'm going to read and you take notes, okay? Ready? So, this is what he said. Go on. The tree won't break. And we've got the rope. She unstuck one hand and felt downward, at the same time finding a tiny space for one foot. Groping with the other foot, she found a hold, but there was nothing for her hands. Her nails scraped against the rock, and she clutched at a tuft of moss that started to come away. She slithered down with a gasp, moss in her fingernails, and felt the rope tighten briefly before she found another hold. Looking down, she saw Vorka much nearer. Now came a difficult part, where the cliff curved under before it reached the ledge, and she found herself hanging like a spider upside down. Can you imagine that? When her feet had found a place, she had to let her hands go and swing quickly forward to avoid falling. And then she felt Vorka's hand touch her foot. She felt Vorka's hand touch her boot. She was there. She dropped down onto the ledge. A shout of relief came from above. Vorka hugged her against his left side. Tears rolled down Maroo's face. From here, a rag looked much nearer. He lay still. Is he dead? Maroo whispered. I think he must be. She felt Vorka's tears on her face. His skin looked gray under the red and black paint, as he was shaking with cold and pain. Let me see the arm, she said. The ledge was small, and the two of them seemed to feel it. With difficulty, Maroo maneuvered herself into a position in which she could splint the arm. It was broken just below the elbow. Vorka gasped in pain as she touched it. So now I would like you to pause this video and write down where exactly was Vorka's arm broken. Remember? It was broken just below the elbow. Write it down. Maroo took from her pouch a bone digging stick and used it as a splint, tying it firmly in place with strips of leather. She made a rough sling from another strip and tied it across his chest. There were no other broken bones, but one of his ankles was bruised and painful. She saw that he would have trouble walking. The problem of getting him off the ledge now filled her thoughts. The way down was nearer and might be easier for him. There was an upright needle of rock on the ledge around which she could perhaps wind the rope. Vorka agreed to try, and they called up to Old Mother to let the rope down. Otak and Rivo had gone. They were already looking for an easier way down, Old Mother said. Maroo, Maroo wound the rope several times around the rock and tied it with a knot that would not slip. The free end she fastened around Vorka's waist. She watched him go over the edge. He moved slowly and very cautiously, using feet and one hand. Maroo thought that she could never have done it herself, one-handed, but Vorka was a skilled climber, and the alternative was death. He reached the ground, panting, and limped toward the still figure of Arag. Maroo pulled in the rope, untied it, and threw it down. She could not use it herself, or the rope would have to be left behind, tied to the rock. She launched her feet over the side, bracing her weight against the rock face. The climb was not so difficult as the one she had just done, and she moved fast to overcome her fear, sliding down the last section and landing with a jolt. She noticed then, for the first time, the dead ibex lying at the foot of the cliff. She ran to Vorka's side. So now I would like you to write that down, that actually she saw the ibex and the ibex was dead. Write that down. Vorka had turned Arag over. There was blood matted in his hair and frozen to the side of his face. Maroo saw, without needing to touch him, that he was dead. Vorka crouched beside him in utter misery. The painted patterns on Arag's face were crisscrossed with lines of blood, and Maroo was frightened. It was like looking at a spirit. She heard a sound of falling stones and looked up to see Old Mother scrambling down a path at the far end of the gorge. "Old Mother!" she shouted and ran to meet her. Old Mother took her hand as Maroo sobbed. "Father is dead. I'm frightened of his spirit." They reached the body and squatted beside it. "What shall we do?" Maroo asked. Old Mother's face was wet with tears. We will wait for your mother and the little ones," she said. "Otak has gone to fetch them." While they waited, Old Mother gradually drew from Vorka what had happened, how he and Arag had hunted all day without luck and were about to come back to the camp when, just as the light was failing, they saw a chance to surprise a group of ibex on the cliff top and perhaps drive some of them over the edge. If it had been familiar territory, they would probably have succeeded. But they were in a strange place, and it was getting dark. An ibex fell, but Arag missed his footing in the half light and fell too. And so did Vorka, who had sprung forward instinctively to try to save his brother as he went down. Maroo listened, crouching beside Old Mother, but Vorka's words and the dead body of her father did not seem real. The change was too sudden. How could Arag, who had been so much alive, be dead? How? The sound of Nimai's voice roused her. Nimai and Rivo were running towards them, followed by Otak and Tikek with the baby. They had brought all the hides and cooking things from the camp. Tikek gave the baby to Old Mother while she ran and fell to her knees beside Arag. "Mother," said Maroo. But Tikek did not seem to hear. She began to wail, louder and louder. Her face was contorted. Maroo felt frightened. She ran and shook her mother by the arms. "Mother!" she screamed again. Tikek stopped and stared at her. Then she threw her arms around Maroo and they both began to cry. Now I would like you to stop and take a look at the notes and try to guess what will happen next. I hope you have a great week. See you later.